Welcome. The Newark Public Library was formed in 1889 when an official referendum passed, which established the concept of a free public library which would be partially funded by taxpayer dollars. The library traces back to a private organization known as the Newark Library Association, which was formed in 1847. This building was located on West Market Street. So in order to use the building and to consult the books and to borrow materials, you needed to provide dues for a subscription. And here is an example of that. This is from 1864. Here you will see a catalog and then a page from a city directory which boasts that this library had 26,000 volumes on its shelves. And as you can see here, a subscription for a whole year was $3, and the library was open until 10 o'clock at night, but books could not be discharged after 9 o'clock. In 1889, when the referendum passed, the library moved into a building on West Park Street. During this time, please remember that many immigrants were coming into Newark, so this, after a few years, proved to be rather inadequate building because it was very small. It was stocked with all the volumes from the previous library that I just mentioned, and books were also being purchased in foreign languages, so it became crowded in a very short period of time. This is a view of the interior of the building, and here is a library card from 1896. Therefore, the Board of Trustees looked to purchase a larger property, which would enable the construction of a larger building with increased capacity. The location was chosen at 5 Washington Street, and construction began in 1899. If you pass by the main library, the cornerstone reads 1899, but it was not actually completed until 1901. The building was very similar to another architectural structure, the Palazzo Strozzi in Florence. It's an example of Beaux-Arts architecture. The building was constructed out of different kinds of marble and limestone, and it was a very beautiful building which was later referred to as the People's Palace. When the building opened, you would enter into the lobby and you'd be greeted by this enormous, impressive marble staircase. There were statues on pedestals on the sides. You'd look up and you would see mosaic tiles on the ceiling. And as you walked up the staircase, you could look up and look at the stained glass ley light, which is located on the very top, the ceiling of the library. You might look at this postcard and say this doesn't look familiar to you. That's because the staircase was later removed. It was considered too intrusive and took up way too much space in the lobby. So it was taken down and it was reconstructed in the back left corner of the lobby. And here is a photo of a room on the second floor. This is currently the reference room, so behind the reference desk, there are actually these arches, and then you see the book stacks in the far left, and in the middle where these columns and the windows are, this space was later enclosed and houses staff offices. And to the right, you will see the main galleries for a long period of time. And continuing to this day is where we host different exhibits on the second and third floors. In 1901, John Cotton Dana was approached by the Board of Trustees. Dana was a very well-known and influential librarian who had worked at the Denver Public Library and also in Massachusetts. He was very forward-thinking. He accepted the position and became the Newark Public Library's second director in 1901. Dana was all about promoting the library. It was a people's palace. He purchased a printing press secondhand for about $27, and he proceeded to make all sorts of broadsides and posters, which he would display throughout the library. They would have quotes by philosophers, they would have different sayings by him, and just inspirational ideas which encouraged the citizens of Newark to grab a book and to learn a new subject. John Cotton Dana was seen and heard. He had very strong opinions and constantly promoted the library. Here is a clipping from a newspaper which indicates that he was urging reforms and wanted the library to be open longer hours. At one time, he even advertised the library on a billboard. John Cotton Dana believed that art and culture were very important, and he began collecting artwork as a way to educate the public. For example, not everybody knew about artwork that was being produced in other countries, for example, Japanese prints. So the collection began as reproductions and as items he clipped out of books and periodicals. By 1905, these files grew to contain 50,000 illustrations. And what was interesting is that you could borrow these. So, for example, if you wanted to decorate your house, you would come in with a frame. The librarian would need to approve your frame, and then you could borrow artwork to take home with you. The print collection was established for school teachers. So these were also clippings which were organized by subject. So if you were a teacher, back in the day, Google didn't exist. You couldn't go on a computer because those didn't exist either. So you'd go to the library, and if you were teaching a lesson on birds or about plants, you could look through the subjects and take however many you needed to assist with your lesson plans. The library also began collecting artwork and also showing artwork. So in 1904, there was an exhibit on the fourth floor of the library. This area currently houses administrative offices, but these were paintings that were collected by the citizens of Newark and lent specifically for this show. And then the art department was established in 1907. So the art department collected art books and also fine prints. And here is an example of students using reference materials and actually sketching in the library. The art department had its own reference desk. In addition to the posters that John Cotton Dana was designing and printing in-house, he was also responsible for two other publications. One was called The Library and the Museum, and the reason why it was called that is because John Cotton Dana founded the Newark Museum within the library building, and the museum was housed on the fourth floor of the library, and the two institutions, were both amassing an art collection. And the second publication was called the Newarker. This was more focused on civic news, what was going on in the city, and also how different institutions exist for Newarkers. While the first publication, was specifically on resources in the library, so you would get book lists, there would be pages and lists of new books that were being acquired, gifts, information about exhibits. The Newarker was much broader in scope, and it was produced for several years. This example is from 1914. While the short presentation is intended to explain just how an institution like the Newark Public Library developed an art collection, it was also important to touch on the history of the institution and to explain John Cotton Dana's influence, because he believed that art was very important. It reached out to people in a certain way, and art was a medium and a tool to enrich people. He had his own collection, which he later donated to the library and to the museum. He had a very specific vision of what he wanted to purchase. Very often, he reached out to his contacts throughout the world. One example is he had a colleague in Japan, and he loved Japanese art, and he would send letters requesting the best examples of Japanese prints, ones that were colorful and exciting, that he just needed to have for the collection. If he was organizing a specific exhibit, for example, there was an exhibit just on the history and the development of writing, he would send his trustees out across the world to pick up examples. So they brought back pieces of papyrus and scrolls and tablets, which, yes, we do have in the collection. In the 1920s, the department continued to grow as a result of donations, as it does to this very day. Dr. J. Ackerman Coles, whose father's statue, whose Abraham Coles, is in Washington Park, donated many rare books, including medieval manuscripts and first editions. Following this, trustee Richard C. Jenkinson also gave us a wonderful gift of materials. We today have a collection called the Jenkinson Collection, which are examples of books printed by fine presses. We also have the Jenkinson Information Files, which are organized by subject. So if you're researching a paper company, a printer, or a printing press, the folders are full of examples which were created by different companies or people. In 1929, Dana passed away, but his legacy continued to this day because we continued to augment the collection. Here is a bookplate that was created by Arthur McDonald in memory of Dana, and we do have hundreds of different types of book plates from around the world in our collection as well. Other items were added and other collections were created after Dana's death, including additional posters, book plates, greeting cards, postcards, autographs, the artist book collection, which consists of about 1,000 one-of-a-kind artist books, fine prints from Puerto Rico, shopping bags, which are a form of work on paper. They're considered a portable form of graphic art, pop-up books, and the illustrated book collection. Many of the collections just mentioned were created by an extraordinary librarian called William J. Dane, who spent 62 long and productive years at the Newark Public Library, retiring in 2012. He called himself the Keeper of the Prints. He passed on in 2019, but we will always remember his contributions and legacy. Mr. Dane loved art. It wasn't even a subject that he was going to study. He thought he was going to be an engineer. But when he began the Newark Public Library, he began as a clerk in the art department and began learning all about artists and different art styles, and it just took on from there. He loved color and whimsy. Here he is on the right displaying an artist's book, which consists of a shoe. Dane created the artist book collection. He also created the pop-up book collection and the travel poster collection and many other collections on paper. He became acquainted with the existing fine print collection, which at the time consisted mostly of European landscapes and portraits. He knew what the gaps were, and therefore he began collecting contemporary art. He became aware of up-and-coming artists. He would travel to New York City a lot and visit galleries. And he was forward-thinking, and so he would purchase very important works for affordable prices before they became valuable. For those of you who might not be aware, we have significant portfolios in our collection and fine prints by Matisse, Dali, Warhol. Many of the artists that you would see on display at museums throughout the area. On the left here is a tribute. It's a print made by New Jersey artist Helen Frank, and it's called Bill Dane, Keeper of the Prints. Today, the fine print collection is named after William J. Dane. We hope that you enjoyed this introduction to the art department, and we hope to continue some virtual programming which would highlight more specific collections and treasures from those collections. Thank you, and we hope to see you soon.